everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 717. Sorry, we didn't have one last week. It was just nothing kind of worked out, and in the end I thought there's no way I'm fit to do a monologue after being up half the weekend doing NAMM on LA time, so I bailed. This week we have a show. Next week we won't have a show the week after because I'm actually going on holiday, which I'm really looking forward to. But if you're interested in what this show is about, it's music technology, and we've just had the NAMM show. We've before that Super Booth. There's also some big announcements today, so we'll be talking a little bit about the news of music technology, maybe things that we saw at NAMM. Welcome to everybody over in the chats. We've got our friends over at the YouTube chat, we've got the IRC, and we've also got the Buzz and everything Restream all sort of happening, so it all joins together, and we do have plans for that where we can maybe amalgamate all of this and start to get hashtags and people can post questions and things. This is all plans. We were going to have Dom this week. I just want to say condolences to Dom. Dom had to pull out at the last minute. The family cat has passed away, and I think when you've got a kid it can be quite distressing, so he's doing the fatherly thing and dealing with all that stuff. But we do have our other two guests, even though there's a black square in the middle of them all. So we'll say hello first of all to Yoad Nevo, who's there in Nevo Sound in London, where he mans the controls, mixing, producing, and also doing a whole bunch of excellent Waves plugin development. How are you? You well?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Have you been busy? Your air conditioning's finally working hard, full time. Ours is on at the moment. It's the first time it's been on this year.
To be honest, it's kind of nice and cool here at the moment. It takes the building is so, all the insulation and acoustic treatment and stuff. It's so heavy that it takes a while, so you need quite a few warm days for the heat to actually infiltrate. So fortunately or not, we have very few of those in London, so it keeps cool most of the time.
I just can't bring myself to put in an expensive air conditioning system that I can't see and I only use for 5 days a year, even though when we're filming it gets really hot in here.
I have a massive system here, and I even have a redundancy, so everything is double. I have two, it's massive, but I hardly use it. I mean, the
if you needed
generates a lot of heat.
Yeah, but that's true. You get a lot of heat out of your gear, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, lovely to have you, Yoad. Always a pleasure. And we've also got Mr. Rich Hilton, who's flying the Sonicstate Folsom T-shirt flag. He's actually on tour with Chic. Are you in Paris by any chance? You're muted. I think you're muted. Take a drink. Excellent.
Take a drink. Sorry about that. I am in Paris. I'm in a absolutely tiny hotel room, and which costs some exorbitant amount of money. And we're playing two shows tonight, once tonight and one tomorrow, at a place called Sal Pleo, and looking forward to it very much.
Nice. Oh, before we get on to other stuff, I just wanted to big shout out to Di Stanton. The last show, he gave us a great super chat. Way to go, Di. Di Stanton just got out of chemotherapy. Champagne all round. Good for you, mate. Very pleased to hear that. Hope everything is cool and you are happy and well and all of the things that you can now enjoy. Thank you very much, Di, and good luck to you. Okay, right. Well, so I wondered where to start because we had loads of news. I suppose we should really start because this happened just before NAMM. Obviously, Dave Smith passed away suddenly, which was a real shock to everybody because, I mean, I was talking to him like 2 weeks previously at NAMM. He seemed very well, obviously getting on in years, but still vital and, moving around. It was just in some ways, I suppose it's a blessing that it wasn't long and drawn out and he didn't suffer, but he was a great guy and one of the most influential and highly regarded people in music technology. And let's not forget, MIDI was his thing, as well as programmable polyphonic synthesizer, analog synthesizer, and many other things. And just an all-round nice guy. I mean, I'm guessing, Dave, Rich, you probably met him a couple of times. He was always around, wasn't he? I mean, he's a lovely, lovely, lovely man. Such a shame.
Dave Smith was so important to the stuff that we do and talk about. It's unbelievable. And yes, on those few occasions where I got to speak to the man, he was incredibly nice and incredibly patient. And I watched interactions with the customers at the NAMM show, and it was just, it was nothing but dignity and love going on there. And of course, the man is substantially responsible for the MIDI spec on which we've been basing our instrument communication for like 40 years now. And if there was ever a testament to how robust and what a great idea that was, it's the longevity and the way that it has accommodated so many things beyond what it was originally designed to do. And I just wish peace for his family, because I don't know that. But, what a great man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody was a bit shell-shocked at the sequential booth, because, I mean, apparently he was en route to NAMM and, you know, doing what he loved doing, as they said in the statement on the website. You know, he was out on the road kind of doing what he enjoyed. I know because, Yoad, you got the Rev 2 that we reviewed, so, you know, you have some Dave Smith in your life, and well, more than one piece of Dave Smith, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, like you mentioned, it was just, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago when I saw you and Dave chatting at the Super booth.
Yeah.
I saw him a few times in a few occasions, but I never got to know him personally. And I was thinking to myself, maybe I should just, you know, kind of step in and force you to introduce to introduce me, but I didn't, and now of course I regret it. He seems such a gentle and down to earth guy for all the stuff that he did, which is unbelievable. I think he's the father of modern, you know, instrument work or electronic instrument work. MIDI is still something that we all use very much. Maybe it's not so much, you know, the DIN cable and setting MIDI channels on our multi-timbral instruments and stuff. Although I still do it, and I still have the MIDI timepiece, you know, from that era, and I really love this technology with all its quirks, but. And then obviously all his synthesizers, amazing. It's just
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as we so often say in these cases, you know, it's also an opportunity to celebrate, you know, what a fantastic legacy he left. But I felt like I wanted to say something, because I've probably spoken to him every year since about 1990, you know, since we started doing, 1999, since we started doing trade shows. You know, it's kind of, by all accounts, we know he lived life to the full, was really into sort of fitness and stuff, and tequila, which is always something I can get on board with. In fact, we got a selection of the Dave Smith glasses, the sequential glasses, so we'll keep them and put them to good use. Anyway, I felt we should bring that up. Now, I was at this point going to be playing a bunch of videos, but unfortunately I can't get them into the system. There's some weird network issue, which means we'll have to discuss about them. So it's a little bit disappointing. But we've got a couple of things. I mean, the first one was I think I might be able to actually press this so that the link comes up. So the first one was the new Nina synth, which is Melbourne Instruments. We trailed it a little bit. We didn't really know what it was. We got a good look at it. 12 voice analog poly with 3 voices per synth, per oscillator. Three oscillators per voice. Gosh, I'm gonna get my words around at some point. And this was kind of, it was one of the hits of the show, really. I think it was a really kind of quite a big deal. Launching soon on Kickstarter, no idea on price. The interesting thing about it was, well, there's two things. It's got basically a Raspberry Pi brain, which is totally hackable, so you could add LFOs, you could add all sorts of stuff, and they're up for that. But once again, the technology that brought this about was the ability to use kind of drone motors, so all of these knobs move, which is kind of interesting. You might wonder, you know, it seems to be split. People go, I can't believe this hasn't happened before. This is what I've needed all my life. And other people go, well, yeah, it's no big deal. But it's an interesting looking thing. I don't know. Yoad, did you get a chance to see some of the NAMM coverage and see what this was about?
Yeah, yeah. This is a weird one. I mean, we used to use motorized mainly faders in order to, and I have them on the desk here. Not that I use them, but in order to bypass a VCA circuit. So we actually move the actual fader that the sound is going through, and that makes sense in the analog world. In the digital world, it doesn't make so basically, apart from the way it feels, it doesn't have any sort of sonic purpose, because it's only
Right.
that justification is to keep a clean and pure signal path in the analog domain. I think it's cool. It brings me to the RS56 EMI EQ, which is a stereo mastering EQ. It's completely passive, and there's like clogs and gears behind, which totally mechanical. That when you move the knobs of one channel, it moves it. It
So it
mirrors
gangs
it
them. Right.
on the
Right.
other channel. So it's a huge beast. We modeled it with Abbey Road, so we have the RS56. I mean, it's just a plugin, but the real thing is like it's a piece of kind of hardware technology, a lot of metal, and this kind of reminds me of that in a way. I think there's something cool about it. I'm not sure how they. So I presume that the knob kind of caps have to be conductive. So you can touch in order to not fight the
Yeah.
motion. So when
I
the
don't know. That's a
takeover,
good. That's
kind
a
of
good question.
automatic takeover. And it's an interesting thing to kind of implement as a controller, if that's possible at all, like to get feedback back from your door, and then you can. It's nice. It's cool. I think it's cool.
That was one. That was an interesting thing. I was thinking. I wonder whether it's possible to make it as a MIDI controller and have all of those MIDI CCs respond both directions. That would be kind of cool as well as
Yeah.
just as a sort of a motorized MIDI controller. It's interesting though, Rich. I mean, it's the thing that we didn't know we needed, but maybe we do. I don't know. But I mean, as a synth, it sounds kind of interesting as well. It's got, they're going for, but it seems like that's the USP.
Well, yeah, to me, and I did watch the video, this gentleman's demonstration. First of all, I think Yoad summed it up very well. But how it's going to feel has a lot to do with how effective it's going to be as an editing tool. From the idea standpoint, it makes sense to me to have all the controls at their current state all the time, rather than having to do a through zero where you activate a control to edit it. I understand the desirability of that, but the desirability of that almost entirely hinges on how it feels when you grab the knob to go and make the edit,
Yeah.
and what kind of sensing they're using and how that feels to use. Apart from that, I don't understand the new return to these giant square buttons at all, and I found it sort of I hate to use this word, but it was almost hideous to me the way the thing looked. And while it wasn't hideous, as a synthesizer, it didn't. What they played was not exciting to me.
Yeah,
So
I
it
know what you're
seemed
saying.
like they started from a great idea, which is move these knobs around. And now, how do we package this thing, and what do we put behind it to represent the benefits of doing this? And that doesn't seem to be satisfying to me as much as the idea of having moving knobs on a synthesizer. That said, does it make any noise? What does it feel like? I'm interested to know operationally. Does it sound like a whole bunch of clackety 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 every time you're playing back, patches that have parameter changes? Like, what exactly does this thing represent, and why doesn't it sound better? Or if it does, why didn't you show us that it does?
I can totally get that. I mean, we've seen this before, haven't we? When synths get prototyped before they've had the sound design and the patches made, and the kind of the people who really know how to make great synth sounds to sort of demonstrate the best of it. Sometimes they can be poorly represented, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not there. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think perhaps the sound demos were the finest. Although Jim did quite a good one, I think, or certainly something better anyway. For us, just
what was the meeting like where they designed on giant square orange buttons? I would like to know what that meeting was like.
Well, you know, I mean, the same on the OBX 8 as they've gone to that for those big tab buttons again. You know, they're not orange.
No, but that's harkening back to the originals from which it derives. In other words, that has a legacy behind it, and plus, it's not that sort of deep throw PPG like looking thing. That's a different thing, and that I think looks fantastic on the new instrument. But these buttons bothered me.
Okay, I'm feeling a title there. These buttons bother me. I like the sound of that. That's good. Sorry, Yoad, you wanted to come in.
I've had it.
I just I agree with everything Rich said, but I want to add that. It's good to know that the availability and affordability of motorized knobs is such that it's available as a mass market instrument, because that means that maybe in the future we'll be able to see all our modular stuff having such knobs and together with automated or memory kind of patch bay with memory, like a matrix sort of active thing. We'll be able to recall patches, and that will be the day that I will fully embrace the analog, the modular environment. I think that will be a big...
Well, that's a really good point, because I mean, if these knobs, I mean, because one thing he did say, Dan was saying, he said, you know, obviously it's not going to be bottom dollar, but it's surprisingly affordable, in his words, whatever that means. I mean, we don't know until the Kickstarter launches, but maybe that I think it's because drones have become so much more prevalent that mass production of that technology is much more available. So maybe it is, you know, something that's just going to be there for us. So I mean, I'm pretty psyched about it, and it'll be interesting to see how we go. So I think at this point we're just going to have a little word from our friends over at, well, where should we go first? Let's go to Baby Audio. Audio. They make plenty of plugins. Oh, I should have had this queued up. That's very inappropriate. Yeah, mixes creative plugins designed to add colour and depth to your mixes. They won Plugin of the Year 2021 with Future Music and Computer Music. Try Spaced Out, a modern interpretation of the Space Echo effect using delay, reverb and modulation for a creative workflow, named Plugin of the Year 2021 again. And get 15% off when checking out with the code ST15. If you buy anything from babyaudio.com, use the code ST15. Thank you very much for their support. Gosh, I am rusty. That was do beg your pardon. Okay, next topic. And this again is, and I think this is kind of interesting. I think we might be heading into well, I don't know where to go first. Where do you want to go first, yeah? Because we got the new plugin format and we got GPU audio. I mean, it seems like plugin central. So.
I think they're kind of related topics in a way.
They kind of are, aren't they? Let me see.
So,
I'll go. Let's go here. Right. So I'm just going to let's start with this guy. Yeah, this is the announcement from Bitwig and Yuhi that they've announced a new open source or an open plugin format called CLAP. You will note that I didn't actually do any STD-based headline puns in our news item, which I think I should get some credit for that. But anyway, so this seems like a really interesting new option. They're going for multiple parameter automation, sort of MPE style, MIDI 2.0. I'm not sure if it's an audio thing or whether it's just the actual whole kind of the whole plugin format. it's an interesting idea. I don't know enough about it yet because it just came out. I am actually going to have an interview with the developers, I believe, on Friday. So hopefully get that out before we go on holiday. So we'll kind of find out a bit more about what this is all about. But it sounds interesting. I mean, I'm guessing, Yoad, as a man who's involved in plugin development, you perhaps have a bit more of a handle on this than I do. Am I right in thinking that it's got some kind of basis in the Juice coding plugin as well, so that could be used in it, or am I just clutching at straws?
I don't know enough details because, as of most of us, we just got the information very recently. It seems that there's a main effort. There has been a main effort. The main effort has been in kind of optimizing the communication between the plugin, the host, and the OS, because there's a lot to be desired in that area. So, and then there's a bunch of new features like multi-channel MIDI protocol, or using MPE, or even enhancing on the capabilities of MPE. And the modulating. The problem with modulating plugins externally is that you can usually or traditionally can only communicate with the plugin through its automation points. So you don't have access to the actual alg inside that controls the process, but you have to go through the layer of automation because that's how the DAW communicates with the plugin. So you have only those kind of means of communications available, and there's some issues with that. Not all controls are sample accurate in plugins because they don't have to be. And once you start using this automation channel, you can get some kind of overflows, you can get buffering problems because of the way this path kind of goes through the OS. Once you find a way to increase the capacity or the efficiency of that information transfer between the plugin and the host, avoiding the OS as much as possible or minimizing the need to go through the OS, you can get a much smoother, much more efficient kind of way of controlling parameters, which, I don't know how they implemented it, and I don't know much about that format, but there are ways of reducing the memory, the cycles of the CPU, and the overall kind of demand of the system. But that requires the parameters of the plugins to be controlled, that they are smooth, so they are capable of moving parameters or shifting parameters in something like audio rates, or even kind of the lower spectrum of audio rate, but
Right.
In a predictable way, I should say, and reproducible way. And that seems like a great effort in that direction, and that can open so many different possibilities, because imagine if you work on a different platform, you're making a track with your friend who's working on Pro Tools, you're working on Ableton. It can open, or Bitwig, of course, it can open possibilities of transferring kind of bigger chunks of that session to the other platform. Because if you have a plugin that controls the modulation and communicates with other plugins in the session, then this can potentially be transferred to the other platform, creating more compatibility and stuff like that. But that's kind of a side effect or bonus.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Rich, I mean, I'm guessing, that they say that this is actually sort of inspired by or built on the concept of MPE, which must make you feel happy because obviously, there's only a certain amount of expression destinations with, because you play a Roly and many people play other things as well, that you don't have as much kind of destination. Whereas this sounds like it's going to be built much more performative and much more sort of real time and open all of that kind of play. It sounds like a really interesting idea. I mean, it's a bold move, that's for sure.
Yes, it is, and made by people whom I respect and whose products sound wonderful. So that doesn't hurt either when you're demonstrating anything to do with synthesizers, having your soundtrack sound really nice. I can't add anything to Yoad's wisdom on this because he is in this and I'm not. And I've never done any coding related to plugins. So I just have to take at face value that there are additional benefits and that these multiple streams of information that are now available that weren't available before are going to prove to be creatively beneficial. So I don't really have a way to evaluate it except to say that pretty much everything I've seen Yuhi do has been brilliant on some level. And I'm not that familiar with Bitwig, but it looks like a fantastic system to me at a distance. So I would trust that they're also some very clever people. And so I think you've got some very clever people behind this. The question of whether you get it adopted by enough other people to make it meaningful now follows logically. But as far as the tricks involved in getting this to happen and what is required, I can't possibly stand on the shoulders of Yoad's experience.
It's interesting. I mean, I think the web page. I think I've got it here. They've actually they've got a list. There's I haven't got the full web page, but there's Arturia, Avid, Epic Games, Unreal Engine, which is a big one to get. Presonus, Valhalla, DSP, VCV, Transfer Records. I mean, it's really kind of. I'm worried that we're going to get into a kind of VHS Betamax thing. But as far as I mean, I think if in an ideal world, what they will have done is the kind of core DSP stuff that you make your plugin in is unchanged. It's really the interfacing layer that they are dealing with mainly. So it's about the, so if you've made your Arturia CS80 emulation plugin, you don't have to completely recode the sound making part. It's going to be more to do with the interfacing of the controls and whatnot. And I guess the piping of the audio might be different, but I mean, I would hope that would be the case. I mean, you might know a bit more about that. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to go, no, you have to do everything from scratch. That would be crazy.
No, because it's not dealing with the actual process. It's dealing with the way you control the process. So it's another layer on top of the actual process core, if you like, or right. the DSP, the actual signal processing. However, I can see it, creating so many bugs and so many problems in a good way, because sometimes when you have it's like porting plugins to different platforms like Windows, Mac, audio units.
There are always issues.
The process is not changing, but the way you communicate with the environment around the plugin changes, and that leads to kind of adaptation and tweaking sometimes, most of the times, I would say. But in a similar way to MIDI that has been kind of dormant for 30 years nearly, the essence of the way plugins communicate with the host has not changed that much. And now this is a great opportunity for progress, really.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound like, I don't want to get too technical, but it sounds like possibly, if this is adopted, then the bit where you have to interface with the OS is kind of handled by it. So you maybe don't have to do quite so much of the sort of, if it's Windows, you have to do it this way. And if it's a PC, if it's Mac, you have to do it this way. Maybe.
It's not, I have to say it's not quite, because you still have the file system and you still have to know where to put all the different parts and different libraries, and but it's just the way it's improving the way the plugin can communicate with the host, or the host with the plugin, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, well, and I had a video to play for that, so that's a bit of a result. And the other thing is, I mean, we should probably do the same thing with plugins as well. Maybe what I'll do, I know it's only been a short while since the previous ad, but I suspect this will be quite a big topic. So we'll just have a word from our friends over at iZotope as well. Thank you very much to them for their support.
iZotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse iZotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the iZotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on iZotope Producers Club, head to iZotope.com.
And once again, we thank them for their continued support. In fact, if you go to iZotope.com/Sonictalk, you get to a special custom landing page where if you use the code SONIC10, you can claim 10% off your iZotope plugin purchase, or try Music Production Suite Pro free for 30 days. Once again, we thank them very much for their support. Okay, so this is another big one. Again, I was going to have a video, but the cloud let me down. It's just the way it goes sometimes. So this is the GPU audio, which is gpu.audio. If I just press this guy, this will bring it up, and then I'll put another link in. So this was this is not new. I mean, we've been kind of in the area of trying to use GPU audio for a while, at various points in music technology. This seems to be a much firmer and much harder go at it. What they've got here is basically, it's a startup with kind of rounds of funding and whatnot, and what they've done is they've kind of created an open beta program where you can get early access, and the idea is it'll run plugins on the GPU. And this, for those of you who perhaps don't know, just briefly, GPUs generally run at a much higher rate. They have faster memory just because they have to move visual data around, which is obviously the speed of light rather than the speed of sound. And you tend to get more grunt out of a GPU, and quite often we're probably not using them as much. At the moment, it's only Windows only. They're going, and NVIDIA, but they're going to AMD, and they're bringing Mac stuff out. And I'm not entirely sure whether they're bridging plugin stuff that you can offload, or whether they're doing custom plugins. They do their own custom plugins, but even with VST3, which they're currently using, they get 1 millisecond round trip, which is pretty good. But if you've got your custom plugin, you're talking about 150 microseconds, which is pretty low. Again, I guess I'll come to, actually, Rich, I'll come to you first, because, we've had DSP accelerators, they're all, we're familiar with this kind of notion of offloading. The idea of actually being able to do this directly to the card that you might already have in your system. Okay, it's not M1 Mac friendly yet, but I guess they're going to have to bring all of this stuff to the party too. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that most people are sitting there with a GPU that's really hardly doing anything, and that this is a really great idea. And it had been proposed to me by a friend of mine some years ago, actually, that this would come. So I'm not surprised to see it, because my friend basically told me this would happen. And I don't see a downside. And it's funny because I bump up against this. I don't do a lot of video work. So I'm currently considering a new computer. And I'm considering it in the context of not expecting to do a lot of video work, because I just don't. But still, you want GPU power so that if you're gaming or doing whatever you're doing, you have that available to you. But quite often it's not really being called upon in any kind of deep way compared to its capabilities. So I think this is a totally sensible thing and makes at least as much sense as what we were just talking about, which is a better plugin standard in terms of mediating between the various aspects of your computer.
Yeah. I wonder if they're thinking about this would interface, whether the new clap would protocol would work somehow. I guess, Yoad, you probably have considered these matters before and looked into it. I mean, it's an interest. I'll tell you one thing before we go any further. This video was the biggest video that we shot on NAMM coverage, by a factor of 3. Oh my! Don't know what that was. That sounds like a door. That's all right. I'll take it down. I mean, and I think it's partly because GPU is something that has got a wider search term, and it'll break out of our little music technology ghetto. But there's a lot of interest in this.
Yeah, it's almost like we're doing a full circle because we started with DSPs because computers weren't powerful enough to run plugins natively. So we had the Motorola chips, which used to run DSP, TDM, Pro Tools environment. And in fact, UAD, actually, their first hardware, I'm not sure if it was the first, but was running on a graphics card. So they've actually implemented that before they went with the Shark processors, and now they're coming back to native. So there's kind of a shift. The main CPU of the computer is busy doing so many things, including moving the mouse. When you just move the mouse, it takes cycles of the CPU from the CPU of the CPU. When you show anything on the screen, it takes some from the graphic card, but the CPU has to channel all that information and the feedback from the different applications. You receive an email. You have so much stuff going on that requires the CPU time or queue. And when you have a dedicated DSP, you're free from all that, and you can communicate with it directly, and therefore achieve a much kind of more optimized processing. And like you mentioned, the power of these GPUs, especially in recent years, is really crazy because they have to deal with all the kind of 3D animation and video generation and all that, which requires a lot of processing power. And for exactly the same reason, this is why GPU cards exist, in order to offload processing from the CPU. And this can be utilized for audio as well. It doesn't come without its kind of quirks and different angles of attack in order to, because it's not something easy, but apparently these guys managed to get it to make it happen, and it's really great news. Just to remind us that a lot of cryptocurrency mining is done by GPUs.
Yeah.
A lot of neural networks run on GPUs. So it's kind of it just makes sense that audio will come next. And again, very welcome sort of enterprise.
It's interesting. I mean, I think I'd like to know more about this. I'm going to try and talk to them over the summer and get a bit more information. I think they've got a suite of free plugins coming out later this month, and then they're going to be announcing AMD and Mac stuff coming, soon. They're already talking to people. They've got kind of, again, developers on the. You got to take some of it with a pinch of salt because obviously they're raising capital, so they have to talk their game up as well. But it would make the most sense to be able to create bridges that bridge existing plugin technology that you can offload to your GPU. So you could just kind of go, run this here. So some sort of, I guess that either means some sort of interpreter or something, because otherwise,
like SoundGrid.
Yeah, because otherwise you've got to basically ask people to recode stuff, which is, again, it's a big ask. I mean, it might make sense if it was a Sony PlayStation, because you have a much bigger potential audience than you do for, a obscure plugin that only somebody's going to use for a particular purpose. So I think that's probably, or I would hope that would be where they were going. I mean, I don't know if that's even viable, because you're going to have to move that stuff
I
around.
don't see any technology that requires a plugin maker to recode their process taking off. That's not possible. The days of people having to write games for the Amiga and then kind of rewrite the same game for the Atari or something like that, those days are over. The amount of plugins, the amount of content you have, you can't be asking that from plugin manufacturers. So it's like a shell. It's like we have with the SoundGrid system, where you have a dedicated DSP, and then you can offload your plugin processing from the main CPU onto that system.
Right.
When we did the SoundGrid Studio and LV1, it's not that we had to write the code for all the plugins. The plugins are still, the process is still the same. It's just the shell or the kind of environment of the plugin that is different. However, because of the nature of how GPUs run and work, it's not trivial to create that environment, but it is possible.
Right. Well, I mean, I wish them luck. I mean, it's like I say, it's still climbing. I mean, people just seem to be endlessly fascinated by this. In fact, we know that it generated a really big bump in their kind of in interest in stuff. So I'm glad we were able to bring, which I guess brings us to the whole NAMM experience itself. Obviously I didn't go. I was running it from afar. The team did a fantastic job. I want to give big props to Rob and Ed and Chris. Chris is still out there, kind of enjoying some downtime, and Mira and Jim, and all our sponsors and all that. But it was a sort of different NAMM for this, and one thing that was very interesting about it, normally we get this huge feeding frenzy around NAMM. So by Monday I would expect to see this many video views, and in this instance it wasn't like that. It's been much more of a kind of a slower build and a longer tail, which is really interesting. So the sense of event seems to have missed. I guess it's because it's a different time of year in the summer and whatnot. But there was still stuff there. Obviously, we saw Nina, we saw the new third wave synth, we saw some other stuff, and we saw the GPU audio people. I just wondered if you'd had any kind of sense of how NAMM kind of was, and whether you think it'll ever be the same. I suppose. I mean, it's a big question. I realise, Rich, you don't have to answer it quite like that. But anything, what did you get a sense of NAMM? I mean, I know you've been busy, so perhaps I've been sort of watching everything we've done, which was a bunch, obviously.
Well, I got a sense of it, and I heard people talking about it, so that also contributed to my sense of it. But I wasn't there. Whether it will ever go back to what it was before, it's hard for me to fathom, because that's wrapped up in a much larger question of how the financial world is and the political world is, and whether or not it's ever going to go back to what it was like before. And that's kind of what we say in America is above my pay grade on some level. I'm not as astute a businessman as it would take, and I'm not as astute in geopolitics as it would take for me to make a reasonable assessment of the likelihood of that happening. My tendency is to think it can't, because things change anyway. But maybe it can come back in a way that is equally satisfying to what was there before, because it seems to me that most of commerce is different. Companies are having a hard time sourcing parts to build their products and developing new products around what they can source. It's everything's shifting right now, it feels like. And so I don't know where it's going to end up, but I'm glad they had it. Glad that there were people who went and showed stuff and enjoyed each other's company. And hopefully, we still have a music business, 10 years from now.
Well, that's true. I don't know. I mean, I think it's difficult also because, when you have a break from a traditional thing in a calendar that we know costs. You know, it's not an insignificant amount of money to do that, to go or to cover it or to be there, are those things. And then you think, well, you know, what's the bottom line? It's very easy to kind of write off the social aspects and the other things that come from it because they're harder to quantify. And as we know, more and more companies are bringing in kind of more sort of hardline traditional financial directors, which don't kind of take into consideration some of those kind of intangibles, I suppose. But there was some good stuff there, right? I know, I saw some of it. I remember editing some of it, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say I didn't have time to watch any guitar stuff, which I need to catch up on. And so I'm not at all familiar with what was happening there. I watched a few things on Sonicstate, and I have to say that they were really good. So kudos to the team. Really good videos. But I would like to add to what Rich has said. I think that there's kind of a trend of, maybe it's just my feeling, but of everyone trying to, rather than putting out products, everyone is trying to create platforms. So it's all about big processes. It's all about like the GPU sort of thing. That's a big thing. I think that the market is quite saturated with products. I mean, there's a limit to how many 303 kind of permutations you can put out, or compressors, or So everyone is looking for services rather than products, or kind of processes which are. So I think that it's a shift. I think it will come back because, like Richard said, the music industry still needs tools. The people still need tools, and cool and exciting new gadgets and plugins and whatever. And in the meantime, while all these companies are making their big plans, I would like to see more things coming out. But I think it will kind of even out eventually.
Yeah, it seems like it feels like we're in a
Sorry.
It feels like we're in a transition phase, doesn't it? Because I mean, some of the news today and some of the news that's been coming out, that feels like we're a paradigm shift where obviously hardware is great and people still make it. It's harder to make hardware at the moment just because of supply issues and having to redesign things that already exist that you can't make anymore because that bit became really expensive suddenly, so you have to design around it. So there's been this kind of slight hiccup in the road, bump in the road for that. Whereas in software, it feels to me like, with stuff like this GPU, the clap plugin format. Also, I don't know if you saw Oak Sound Soothe. They've basically recoded that so that it'll run real time, less than 1 millisecond latency, so you can run that in live production. So it feels like we're ending up in this kind of paradigm shift that is. As the CPU cycles become more available again with the system on a chip stuff that everybody's moving towards, and that we're getting another sort of an uplift in what's possible in software and what we expect from software. So it feels like we're at a slight kind of junction somehow, and there's going to be a lot of. So I'm sure you're probably finding the same thing, because I mean, you're a developer, and I'd imagine it takes a while for you to develop stuff. But now you've got these M1s and M2 processors. There's probably things that you're going, that means we could, So there's going to be more of this stuff coming along that's really makes us almost go, crikey, how on earth can you make that so real time and so fast? And so that's where I think we're going to see some big shifts.
Yeah, and it's the cloud and the kind of service sort of universe. I think we're leaning more towards rather than kind of local programs in general, obviously. But I think that's why we're seeing that kind of like you said, the hardware availability, that's a big factor as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting. I don't know what NAMM are planning to do next time, whether they're going back to January or whether they're going to do another June one, because this was in place of, it was sort of in the traditional time that Summer NAMM is usually, when Summer NAMM is usually in Nashville, which is a great, I mean, we used to go to that, but it became much more about kind of guitars and dealers and whatnot. So, you know, I'd be interested to see how it shifts. But speaking of which, there was also another product announcement today, which I suppose, we should briefly cover if we can quickly, and that's the new Moog Mavis. So let me just make sure I've got the right video, because I think my list is all sort of different. Yeah, here we go. So let's see. This is the new Moog Mavis from Moog, rather, not Moog Mavis. What am I saying? And this is a sort of DIY kit. And rather than do, you know, here's all the features, they've just basically chained together a bunch of artists making tunes, which are Asima, Arisha Jane, Nigel, and Silent Servant. And it's, you know, I think it works pretty nicely. So if I bring up, I think I've actually got, I haven't got a URL in there, I missed fine. So the actual Moog Mavis itself is a single analog oscillator with wavefolding, an LFO, which is CV trackable, so I think you could use it also as an oscillator as well. Not sure if it's a 24 ladder dB, but it's 349, so it's kind of pretty affordable. So it follows on from their kind of work stat stuff. Patch bay on the left, which is a really weird idea because everybody's putting patch bays on the right. What's going on there? I don't understand. Do these little kind of desktop synths interest you, Rich, or are you more kind of more about stuff with keyboards on?
Well, it interests me, and I think it looks like a cool product. And the fact that when you say 349, that's kit form. Is that correct? 349.
Yeah. I think it's. I think it's kind of snapped together and screwed together rather than soldering individual components onto boards and stuff.
Okay, right, fair enough. I think it's a cool product, I mean, I didn't really go that deep into the patch point part of it, but it's a pretty simple synth. And the fact that they've included the first Moog wave folder is kind of interesting to me. So I'm interested to see how that works and what that sounds like as you use it within this structure. The fact that it's got patch points that sort of match their other gear is cool. And sure, why not? Looks cool. It's fun. People get
yeah, I think it's hard to know. We were supposed to have one. There's been the usual inundation of everybody got one, apart from the UK reviewers, many of us, because there's loads of stuff held up in customs. So I'll have to do it when I get back. But yeah, that's why I haven't got mine. But yeah, more Moogs. Nothing wrong with that in the world. I'm just trying to find the web page at the moment.
I want to say that the first part of the video reminded me of capture images. I almost wanted to select the traffic lights and bicycles and stuff like that. Seems like a cool product. I mean, I like, in theory, I don't have many of those desktop. I don't have any at all. I used to have a Mofo, but I think that's as close, and a 303, which is arguably a desktop unit. So it's not for me, but I think that a small unit that creates big sound is always nice, isn't it? And you can do so much with one analog synth, and just record it over and over and multi-track and all that. So yeah, I think it's cool.
Oh, they've got that web page that goes sideways and scrolls. So in this browser that's in this, it hasn't got a scroll bar, so I can't show you the images. Damn you, Web 2.0! Foiled again. I'm sorry about that. I would have, but yeah, it does look kind of interesting. Just see if I've got another picture here that I can just. But it is quite basic, and I think to a point it. You know, Moog have traded on the name for a really long time now, and quite rightly so, because they make some beautiful synthesizers. And I think these little ones are of less interest to me personally. The Mother 32 sounded pretty nice, but I think the last one I really enjoyed was the Grandmother, the 4-voice, and the Mother.
Nice.
That with the kind of the surface mount recreations of the original Moog modules. I mean, that thing is so. I guess, Moogy. You know, it really, you get a sense of why with something like that, why Moog is what it is. And I don't know if I'll get that with this. I mean, the wave folder is really handy, and having those extra features is cool. But I'm wondering whether there are plenty of other modules that will probably do a little more and will have a bit more about them that, you know, you might not get with the name. But I'll reserve my judgment until I get one in my hands. I'm hoping, because the last kit I got was the Teenage Engineering big yellow thing, which honestly the ends of my fingers got really sore because it was one of the most fiddly and irritating kits I've ever put together. And then when he finally put it together, it was just really crappy. It just didn't have, there's no note tracking, all the scaling was off. I fully, this won't be the case with the Moog because they know how to make synthesizers, you know, and I think Teenage Engineering do a lot as well. It's just, this was a donkey, and that's just the way it goes. But yeah, I don't know. It'll fit in the mix. It's always nice to have a small Moog you can whip out and impress the neighbors with.
But I think the kit form thing is important to it, and it kind of goes along with the cultural changes that we've seen, where people are more involved in deconstructing and sort of reverse engineering their stuff and getting inside of it and doing things. And in the post-World War II era, where a lot of guys with a lot of technical training were now out in the job market, kits were very popular, and people used to buy kits to build their home audio system. And there were kits for all kinds of things, and people like to get their hands dirty, so to speak, in that creative process. So as our culture has become increasingly devoted to craft-type concepts and customized things, I noticed that people want to get in. People want to buy a Raspberry Pi and put it in their own box and tweak it out and make it suit what they're doing, you know, put orange buttons on it or whatever. And I think this just makes sense for people to have kit form synthesizer stuff available to them in this culture, as I see it.
Yeah, I suppose that's in some way that's probably one of the reasons why that modular has become so popular, because effectively, you know, it's like a kit form thing, except the individual modules, you know, you can put them wherever you want, you plug them how you want together. You can, so that makes a lot of sense. But I know sort of the irony of ordering a kit from Amazon, so it arrives right now, is sort of, it's the instant but yet delayed gratification is just it's quite a paradox, I think, in modern society. But we'll see how that goes. I don't know.
Yeah. I have nothing to add. I mean, kids are not for me right now at this stage of my life. So I like the sound though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, speaking of Raspberry Pis, that's one of the things, you know, we do this NAMM thing. We take a Raspberry Pi on the road with us, and I ended up, some of the stuff that we could do with that now is just kind of crazy. I've been writing all sorts of stuff, which makes it a lot easier to communicate and upload stuff. Because one of the things that we did find, and this was a big issue with NAMM, and this affected everybody, is NAMM, normally they have a 2-week get-in. So, you know, previous show, because it's Christmas, they get 2 weeks and everybody gets set up. This time there was a big show 3 days beforehand. So they had 3 days to set up all the NAMM infrastructure. And one of the things that unfortunately got hosed with that was the press network, which was, you know, it was adequate, but nothing like what it normally is. And I suppose if anybody from NAMM is listening, could you please make sure that you sort that out next time? Because if I'm paying for 3 journalists to fly halfway across the world, I would like them to be able to use the internet when they get there to the fullest possibility that it is. That's just my little that's my little thing. So yeah, there was lots of late nights because we were like, right, what are we going to do? How are we going to solve this problem? Because we're getting almost no upload bandwidth, and network is everything. It really is. It really does. But it has enabled it. But again, through adversity, you can innovate, and that's kind of what we ended up having to do, which is also good, but just not at the time. It's a bit stressful. Okay, well, I think we're probably due. You know, it's about time we finish. I'm going to say no show for the next 2 weeks. I'm hopefully, if the UK aviation industry can get me out of the country and back in time, I will be going away for 10 days to Spain for a bit of R&R. My daughter will be finishing her last A-level on Friday, and we travel on Monday. So hopefully we'll all get to have a bit of a chill, and I hope you enjoy a bit of a summer break. I know, Rich, what are you up to? Are you in the country now for a while, or are you just or in Europe for a while?
Yeah, well, I don't go back to the States until August, but where are you going? I'm going to Spain next week.
Really? I'm going to, we fly into Barcelona and then we go to Costa Brava, so a place called Tossa de Mar, which is near Girona. Anywhere near you? Not doing a gig there, are you?
We're playing in Barcelona.
Ah, what
and
night?
And then later in the summer, we'll play in Marbella and on Mallorca, which I'm really excited about. But
okay.
I don't know when it is. I think it's next week. It may even be next Tuesday or Wednesday. We're playing in Barcelona.
That's funny. Okay, I'll keep you posted because you never know. I think we're about 100 kilometers from Barcelona where we're staying. So I think Marbella's south. Yeah. Well, I've got a car, so it's not impossible. That would be pretty groovy.
Okay.
I've got a couple of teenagers with me as well, so we could have it could be fun. Anyway, but lovely to have you all, Rich. It's a pleasure. I'm liking the. When you're in Paris, it's like you've got this kind of almost like an old master's colour scheme going on there. It's very photogenic, I must say. A little sort of slightly reduced saturation, but it kind of works well, the background. So thank you very much for joining us. Also, Mr. Yoad Nevo, there in Nevo Sound, are you getting straight on back onto the mix, or have you got some other fun stuff to do?
In fact, I have a meeting that started right now, so I'm going to have to say goodbye and leave you, and thank you for having me. And
no problem.
Enjoy your holiday and enjoy the tour, Rich. And
thank you.
We'll see you later.
All right, well, that's it for this week. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody in the chat room and all of you guys and gals. We much appreciate it. So that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.